you can give them practical examples of how, some of their most challenging problems, right? Some of their most important strategies for growth and success oftentimes come from places that are unexpected, right? So whether that's having a eureka moment in the shower, whether that's resting your head down to bed at night, whether that's going out in nature, whether that's, dancing, moving, breaking the script of your normal routine, there's all this science that shows that that's how that part of the mind starts to speak to us.
Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce with coaches Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson, where we are delving into the realms of leadership and coaching. Join us as we sit down with remarkable leaders and coaches, uncovering their unique insights and strategies that make them truly exceptional. We'll explore the question, what is your secret sauce and when did you know? Unveiling the hidden ingredients behind their success. Are you ready? Well, let's get started. Well, before we begin, a quick shout out to our season sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Dave, what do we have today?
I'm excited to welcome Justin Milano into our podcast. And I wanted to start off and just say to Justin, the reason we created the podcast is mostly Matt and I like to hang out with other coaches. Like it's kind of like we found our people. Some of the other things, the reasons we do this is we really want to, spread coaching in a way, the message, the importance, the value of it, coaches that are in training, experienced coaches, just an opportunity to share what are some of the best practices and the secret sauces that our coaches have. So we like to start off with energy check-in. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your energy level? 1 low, 10 high.
Yeah, thanks, Dave and Matt. Really nice to be here with you guys. And on the energy level right now, I'm probably actually at a 7. I've actually just come back from several days of travel, many amazing meetings, very great opportunities we were exploring. So I'm definitely at a 7 right now, but it's one of those I feel well used, kind of 7s, right? Like a pleasurable going into the weekend.
I like that. It's like when I played on too many soccer teams when I was younger, I was exhausted, but I sat back and I'm like, I felt well used. That was good time spent. Matt, what's your energy level?
You know what? I was going to anchor like on a 9, but when Justin said 7, I feel like a lot more freedom. So I'm at 7.5. How's that?
All right. Well, I hate to keep beating you in energy level, Matt, but I'm an 8. Not that it's a
Okay,
competition. No,
fine.
what has you at a
Okay.
7.5, Matt? What brings you?
Well, yeah, I've had a very adventure-filled week. Lots of hours spent coaching this week, which is I don't think I've ever actually done this much in one week. So yeah, I'm in it, and I'm looking forward to it today. I think I've already had breakfast with a dear friend of mine, so I'm ready to get going. I'm excited.
Awesome. My 8 is I had a nice walk with my dog Max this morning, and I'm ready to rock. So, Justin, to start, you're on a plane coming from wherever you were traveling yesterday, and the person turns to you that's next to you and says, "Oh, hi, what do you do? How do you introduce yourself?"
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So most of us in the modern world, right, introduce ourselves by our profession, what it is that we do nowadays. And so actually, when people typically ask me that question, I try to introduce myself a little bit more about, who I am and then kind of lead into what I do as a career. But for the purposes of this podcast, since we're here, talking with coaches, so I've been an executive coach now for the past 12 years. I've also been a founder and CEO for 20 years. I teach innovation at University of Chicago Executive Education. And yeah, so I'm actually working all around the world. So one of the things I love about my job is I get to work in different cultures everywhere from, United States to Asia, Europe. And every year we get to bring leaders to amazing places like Bhutan and Peru and so forth. So I'm very much a global citizen at this point.
I like that. And Matt, go ahead. Do you have something?
I mean, I'm just fascinated by the whole idea of being a global citizen. I think it kind of expands your horizon in terms of not just thinking about very sort of like, oh yeah, this is the issue I have, or this is the issue that I have near my home. All of a sudden you realize Everything gets put into perspective.
I like that. And, the idea of how we connect with our clients and how we connect with who they are, their unique selves. I did have a question. You teach innovation, and I recently got this question. What's the intersection of innovation and coaching? Right? Is there such a thing as coaching innovation? Is it helpful? Is it a foundation? How do you see that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, coaching can be such a great path to innovation, right? Because so often, one of the things that actually blocks innovation is oftentimes our resistance to the way things are. And it's actually the willingness to face into and lean into the way things actually are that we actually get to dig deep and uncover what wants to happen. And as we start to do that, it starts to unveil new paths that we hadn't considered. Because a lot of times the mind, what we like to do is we like to have certain ways of looking out in the world and saying, hey, this is how I want things to be. This is the strategy. This is what we want to achieve. But oftentimes it's our willingness to stretch outside those kind of desires and the ways we want the world to unfold and meeting the world as it is, where a lot of innovation is actually possible.
I like that. And I might have additional questions because the conditions and capabilities that you work on in innovation, like for me in some ways are connected to kind of like a little bit of the design thinking approach of how you create your life, right? And how you can look at things and how you open things up more if you're looking from a creative approach as opposed to a limited thinking approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, here's a good example, right? And so one of the things that's fundamental to coaching too is the power of good questions, right? And so questions are the disruptors of the mind. So let's use a little example here. So when I say to you, the grass is green, a lot of people go, yeah, yeah, the grass is green. It's a statement. It's that's how it is. That grass is green. When you take that same thing and you turn around as a question, you say, is that grass green? And notice what happens in your mind. You're like, oh, okay, is that grass actually green? Is that a combination of sensory inputs that's telling me that that grass is green? Does that grass even exist? So interestingly, some of the best inventors of our time, people like Leonardo da Vinci, one of their favorite things to do every morning was wake up and write down 5 to 10 questions that they would never know the answers to. And each of those questions would then guide their curiosity and creativity even further. And so it's actually this willingness to live in the world of the unknown, asking great questions that actually opens up a lot of that creative potential and innovation. Really fascinating.
I like that. I'm going to start. So write down questions that you don't have the answer to every morning.
Yeah, good question is actually a question that you can't immediately respond to it and say, oh, this is the answer. It's one of those questions you're like, oh, wow, like, I wonder what breakthroughs are required for my business to grow next year.
Hmm.
And it's like you can allow yourself to sit in that. You can go for a walk, you can go on a hike, and you allow that part of the mind, right? That system one mind, as Daniel Kahneman described, to start to give you some new associations, some new information that comes out of nowhere. And you might realize that the answer to that question isn't completely different than what you thought. And it might actually be something that's within you that's actually blocking the question and the potential from coming through. But it's the question that guides the process. And that's why I love coaching, because all we're doing all day is asking really good questions that disrupt people's normal way of thinking and behaving.
I like it. You kind of you
Yeah.
riffed perfectly into the first question, which is what is your secret sauce?
Well, so for me, it's been several years now that I've really rested into and become comfortable with this. But for me, I've noticed that I've been able to be effectively bridging the modern world with timeless and ancient wisdom. Right. So as I look at my life and I look at all the work that we do, I see this great opportunity right now in the world where I'm a huge advocate and I celebrate all the modern science and technology and AI and disruption. And I love working with entrepreneurs and executives who are, pioneering new paths and creating all of this. But what also I'm noticing is that a lot of people are not anchoring all of this in this timeless ancient wisdom that's been carried in cultures for thousands of years around what it really means to be sustainably well, right? What does it mean to be truly happy and fulfilled, within ourselves, and also our relationship to the natural world and each other. A lot of that's been fractured. And so a lot of people aren't feeling so good and feeling so well. And then when we're not feeling well within ourselves, whatever we create outside of ourselves becomes a reflection of that.
Hmm.
So there's this amazing opportunity now to bridge and balance those worlds and say, yes, we want to celebrate all the modern achievement and progress, but we also want to ground that and some of that ancient and timeless wisdom that's been offered to us. And if we can do that, we can be so much more powerful.
Wow. Justin, how did you know that that was your secret sauce? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, great question, Matt. Right. So for me, as I look back now, so many of us, right, when we look back at our lives, we oftentimes resist our parents and say, "Hey, I don't want to be like my parents. I want to be different." But I look back now with a lot of appreciation because I see that my mother, when I was 7 years old, she started bringing me to ashrams to meet gurus and meditate and connecting with shamans and Native American Indians and so forth. She's also a life coach, and so she was a little bit more, eccentric. And then my father was the complete opposite. He was a businessman. He ran a travel tour operator in Boston. Real gentleman, really polished. And of course, they didn't make good sense together. So when I was 2 years old, they got divorced. But as I look back now at the growing up with them, I realize that I'm kind of the integration of that. That I actually, so as I go throughout the world now, I'm sitting in there and I'm working with executives in big finance, in New York and London and venture capital and, entrepreneurs and tech executives. And I can live in that world and understand that world and the practicalities of it. But also throughout the course of my life, a big through line has been immersing myself in all these beautiful wisdom traditions and cultures. And so also I can immerse in that as well. And I'm so fortunate now that I have so many deep friendships and collaborations with indigenous cultures around the world, which is really foundational to what we're doing here at Abroad.
Hmm. One of the questions is sort of, okay, so when was the first time that you're like, okay, this is my secret sauce? Or like, at some point in time, it got to be like, oh, I'm the integration with my parents. Maybe something that you resisted, because I can totally relate to this. Like, all of a sudden, your mom says to you, this may be my story or not. Boy, that sounds a lot like your dad. And you're like, oh, I didn't want to sound like that. But there's some
Yeah. Well,
wisdom there, right? That you're trying to go, hey, there's something about that. There's, is the shadow, am I sort of being driven by that shadow? Or, or is it, can I actually kind of lean into it and understand it better?
yeah, yeah. Well, there's that. I love that, Matt. Like there's that opportunity when you finally embrace, kind of who you are, and what it is that your unique gifts are and what you're here to bring to the world. And so to answer your question on when that really started to take form, it was about 7 years ago. I remember being on a beach in Australia, and it was one of those moments where I was taking a pause to deeply reflect on my life and my work. And I was doing a lot of work, doing executive coaching, going into organizations, doing workshops, all that stuff, covering things like, growth mindset and, all these type of things that we need to offer professionals. And I realized that there was something missing. And as I asked those questions and I said, hey, what is that thing that's missing? And I said, hey, if I had $1 billion, what would I do with my life? What would I be spending my time on? And I realized that I would be immersing, in these different wisdom traditions and cultures. So the idea sparked, and I said, what if we bring some of the world's leading executives and founders to places like Bhutan, which is where our vision was born? And so I went to my board and I was like, okay, I got this idea. We're going to bring, all these leaders to Bhutan. We're going to, reconnect them to themselves and nature and immerse in this wisdom. And we're going to integrate, executive education sessions throughout. And at first, like, that's crazy. That doesn't scale. That doesn't whatever. But fortunately, I did have some board members that embraced it. And I knew then, as we embarked on that, within just several months, all of a sudden, some of the top leaders and executives in the world were being drawn to it. And it was a huge catalyst. It was a huge breakthrough for everything we were doing. Everything we were doing was great. But as soon as we started doing that in Bhutan, we brought these leaders in. Many of them were so profoundly changed that not only did it create ripple effects in their lives and their leadership, but even some of them invested and became partners in the company. And that's when we really started to take off. And for me, that was the oh my God, I spent my whole life here avoiding this part of myself, the things that I love the most, travel and wisdom. And now that I've reintegrated them, now my life is flowing and flourishing. And so that's a great reminder for a lot of us. You can actually do what you love and integrate that into something that's very practical and useful and find creative ways to do it. So that's when I really knew this was my thing.
And so I'm fascinated by this idea of risk. Well, and one, as a business owner, did you ever feel or how did you feel like when you're like, you know what, I'm gonna take the jump and try, or did you bounce it off somebody? I mean, did you have another wisdom partner? Like, hey, this is a big risk. No big risk, no big reward for the sake of leaders. What happened there?
Yeah, well, so one of the things when we talk about risk, right? This is what I love about entrepreneurial ventures, right? Is that that's a foundational component. You have to take some calculated risks here and there. And so at that particular moment in time, I knew that there was some kind of spark. There was something new that needed to be integrated, and I didn't expect it was going to be that. But as I started to explore it, interestingly, one of my board members, who's one of our founding partners, we actually met originally in Bhutan. There was this incredible synchronicity and serendipity that brought us together. He's from a major university, and he runs an organization that has all these business leaders that are imagining possible futures. And I was in Bhutan early on, and I went there with a group of emotion psychologists and spiritual leaders and coaches. And we were exploring kind of the deep fundamental secrets to, human wellness and happiness and contentment and so forth. And there was just this way that we somehow came together at the Gross National Happiness Conference in Bhutan. And we ended up having dinner together. And that was actually the beginning. We didn't see it at the time, but that was the beginning of what was going to become abroad, our company.
Hmm.
And so I think when I reached out to him and my other board member and explored this, there was probably just some part of us intuitively that knew, even though this sounds a bit crazy, there's something here.
Hmm.
Like we met here early on, and there's been so much good stuff that's unfolded since. Let's go back there and see what we can do. And then everything opened up. So
Hmm.
it was kind of an amazing story. Yeah.
Justin, you just kind of, well, to me, this is a sharing of a real story of listening for what wants to be created. In the moment, it's a little auto charmer. Yeah. In terms of like, hey, what wants to be created in this moment, and being willing to give voice to that idea.
Absolutely right. And that's one of the gifts we can give people as coaches, right? Because what's happening now in the modern world is everybody's moving around faster and faster, right? So disconnected from themselves, the world around us. And so one of the things that's great about a coaching session is you give people that opportunity to slow down and just like, okay, all this stuff is happening. Where are you? What's going on? What's needed? What's wanted right now? And that's just a great gift to give people on a regular, continuous basis. But it also brings up the potential that the more that we can intentionally bring ourselves outside of our day-to-day context, into nature, into places where stillness and quiet is there, that's when we can listen for that deeper wisdom around what is ultimately wanted.
Hmm.
So I love that,
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. Like I'm seeing the process of an executive that just comes out of way too many finance meetings and has an opportunity to engage, and then has a choice to dive deep enough in that they get value. What does it look like as you think of that typical leader that you're working with, how you bring them from that journey into what you had described as so valuable for you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a couple of things there. So if we're talking, Dave, about taking some of those leaders and getting them to places that are really outside their context, like Bhutan, Peru, and so forth, it's actually a huge commitment, a huge lift of energy, time, resources to do that. So that's one thing. But you don't have to go all the way to Bhutan or Peru to be able to create these same conditions for yourself, right? So we want to make sure this is practical for everybody. But basically, when coaching people, um, this is where it's really helpful to have that bridge between the scientific and the modern and some of this traditional wisdom. And so when you talk about things like System One and System Two Mind, the research by Daniel Kahneman, you can give them practical examples of how some of their most challenging problems, right? Some of their most important strategies for growth and success, oftentimes come from places that are unexpected, right? So whether that's having a eureka moment in the shower, whether that's resting your head down to bed at night, whether that's going out in nature, whether that's dancing, moving, breaking the script of your normal routine, there's all this science that shows that that's how that part of the mind starts to speak to us. So the invitation to them is to say, hey, you know what? I get that high performance in the modern world is typically believed to be wake up in the morning, work as hard as you possibly can until hopefully you don't face plant at the end of the night. as a form of productivity. And we see this mirrored by big corporations like monitoring keystrokes of virtual, workers. There is no emphasis placed on stillness and silence and taking time just to simply be and connect with ourselves. So the invitation, though, through that science is to say you can actually make better decisions. You can define better strategies. You can feel better and more well. And the way that you respond to the world, everything will shift as you intentionally create this time for yourself. So what does that look like for you? How is that possible for you in your day-to-day context? And sometimes they also need to do that larger context shift by going to something exotic like Bhutan.
You have to bring all of the, your family challenges too, right? Because wherever you go there, you bring you with you. And so I would imagine that is actually super helpful in actually being able to talk about those things, is to get away and talk.
Yeah, exactly. So Matt, so what it comes down to is it's unique to everybody, right? And this is what we also love about coaching, is that there is no prescription, there is no right way to do things, right? It's about getting curious and seeing what's best for this person, what could be most helpful to them, like what is the path that could actually support them in doing this, and just asking those questions. And yeah, we have so many obligations, in our day-to-day life. So all this stuff is very hard. You're dealing with kids, you're dealing with the stresses of your job and being a leader and all the people and all the expectations. And that's where you need that coach to have that really quiet time to step back and reflect on all of it and know that you've got somebody there for you. That's not your board. That's not your significant other. That's not your family, to reflect on what's most needed.
For some reason, I found myself in an ice cream parlor and looking at the different flavors of what you're offering and saying, I think I want a taste of that and then a taste of that. What would like a taste of a session with you look like? Like if you were looking down from 100 feet?
A taste of a session. Okay, so you mean as far as like a fit call or like a chemistry call
Yeah,
with
if
me?
we were saying, all right, well, I am ready to face plant at the end of the day, and I do need help. I'm a little aware. Help me, Justin. Help me.
Okay, great. Well, one of the things, Dave, that I always do whenever I'm coaching, right, is one of the most important things that all of us as human beings are seeking. In our global research, it doesn't matter if you're from the United States, Asia, New Zealand, Europe. If you're an individual contributor or a CEO, we're incredibly hard on ourselves for our mistakes and our failures and our setbacks. Incredibly judgmental. We get that harsh inner critic, right? So one of the things that I always lead with whenever I'm connecting with people is, first, I trust that there's a good reason why that person's sitting there in front of me. Like, I trust that whatever forces kind of brought us together, that for whatever reason, there's something useful about this connection right now. And I feel that way with you guys. I see every single connection as almost sacred. Like, it's a lifetime friendship, a lifetime collaboration. And I learned that from a lot of the wisdom cultures. So I start there. And then I always lead with that unconditional acceptance. Like, what people fundamentally want more than anything is to unconditionally accept themselves, like to recognize we're human, we're messy, we're growing, we're imperfect, to embrace and accept ourselves. And also, it's just one of the greatest gifts that you can give to another human being, is to let them know that you are, there and not judging them in whatever's happening right now, because we're all going through different things at different times. And also to the recognition that every human that we come in contact with has some level of suffering going on around something. It could be a health challenge, it could be a family challenge, it could be a work challenge. So suffering is just part of the human experience. So what I do is I just simply lead with creating that context of unconditional acceptance to allow whatever needs to be brought to the surface to be brought to the surface, and then we can address that. And then I'm always bringing it back to like a friendliness and like a laughter and like, oh my God, this human thing, right? It's just, and so I try to lighten up whatever those challenges are. And so the combination of that combined with the fact that I think one of the other things that's really important in coaching is that the more that we can have some of that practical experience that really matches the client, the more they can also deeply trust us. Like, Justin, you've been a founder and CEO for 20 years. You intimately understand how challenging and complex this role is. So you're not going to give me some kind of theoretical, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You're going to meet me from experience, and you're going to meet me from that deep empathy and unconditional self-acceptance. And then from there, something amazing can arise. That's a long answer, but I love that question.
That's good. That's a really good understanding. I think you gave our listeners what it would look like in the meet and greet. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want a full sundae of that, 3 scoops and all the toppings. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hey, Justin, what would you want, or what do you want from your own coach?
Oh yeah, well, interesting. So I've got a few, right? So of course I'm biased being a coach and the value of coaching, and of course we are as well. Like we love this, right? So we're here, we're talking, we know that other coaches are listening, we know how valuable this practice is to the world. But for me, it comes down to, as I look at having a few different coaches in my life, it's really for different things and different reasons, right? So some people support me. I've got one senior executive, really interesting actually, is that he came with us to Bhutan, and then I coached him for a year. And now I'd actually say that he's more my coach, which is so fascinating because I helped him through a life transition and journey. But he also happens to be a very prominent executive and has been through companies from the first 10 people to an IPO and thousands of people at 3 different companies. So now I kind of lean on him whenever I have major business challenges. I know going to him and working that through, there's a deep sense of trust around that piece. But then I have other people that help me on more of like a soul human level, right? And so I look for those different levels of support, and oftentimes you can find that in one coach, but it's really about knowing that we have these different levels of we have to be practically lined up for success and have that experience to guide us through difficult challenges and decisions. But then there's also that kind of keeping in the bigger picture, the whole of who you are as a human being and that bigger soul journey that you're on. I like to have some of those people as well.
Hmm. And are those formal or are they informal? Like, how would you see like those people in your life? Is it just like, hey, this is Justin. I just wanted to, if you got a minute, I got this challenge. I just want to run by you. Or is it more formal?
No, it's more formal. Yeah, for sure. So on that kind of soul level, those people I meet with probably on a once a month basis. And then I have, every couple of weeks or so, I meet with the person that supports me with the business challenges. And again, one of the for some of you coaches out there, you have the capacity to meet both of those, right? And that could be a really powerful combination of a coach to say, hey, I can both support you on the practical journey of your profession or career and your leadership, but I can also carry with me that understanding of the bigger picture of who you are and have that tremendous depth, right? But I always recommend for it to be formal. There's something really powerful about paying somebody and having an energetic exchange for their support and having it be on a consistent, continuous basis because there's no finish line in human growth, right? Every week, every month, there's always new challenges that are being presented to us. And so to have those people that understand those challenges and have that greater understanding of who you are, that's a great gift to give yourself.
I'm clicking the wrong buttons. I like that concept of like the board of directors, and as you expanded into a board of coaching, a group coaching session and being able to tap into different resources, different perspectives. What are 3 resources that you would recommend for existing coaches, people developing their coaching skills?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I think about resources and going back to this, so for this particular interview with me, as we talk about making that bridge from the modern to the ancient or the timeless, right? I would say from a book standpoint, people like Michael Singer are really fantastic at being able to communicate these deep and profound truths in a way that the modern mind can really understand. So I'd say any of his books, whether it's The Untethered Soul or Living Untethered, absolutely a fantastic resource. If this whole notion of bridging both the modern and the ancient is interesting to coaches out there, and they want to integrate that somehow into their style. So that's number one, I would say. Number two, I would also welcome people that are interested in that type of coaching. We're in the process right now of building out our global coaching community. We've got coaches in the United States and Asia and in Europe and New Zealand and so forth. But we're always looking for good people that really have that capacity for both the practical, and the transformational. And so if anyone's interested in that, to be part of our community, because we love having these conversations like we're having right now with our coaching community. It's some of the richest conversations that we can have. And we're always looking for good people because the success of our organization is based on that. So yeah, those are a couple of resources I'd recommend.
Nice. Dave, what's your reflection of the time?
My reflection is very interesting. The sun is shining here in New York and slowly trying to take over my face. And at first I resisted it. And then I said, you know what? I can't fight it. So I need to embrace it. So partly my reflection is, as Justin talked about, like what you learned through growing up and the influences, and eventually embracing it in a way that blended the best of those things. And I think it reminds me that as we coach others, we need to encourage people to blend what they have into the best possible like mix of who they can be, as opposed to let's quiet this side or quiet that side, or like
Mm.
figure that out. So thank you, Justin, for reminding me of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the perfection of the sun in your face right now, right? And so, this is a good thing to leave people with, is that, basically all human suffering can be traced back to two things. One, we're either resisting the world as it is, or resisting whatever experiences are showing up, or two, we're attached to them being different than what they are. It really is that simple. So the greatest way, so it's achieving a great sense of inner peace and balance and happiness and contentedness is not about trying to, reorganize the world around you or try to manipulate the world around you to create certain conditions for you to feel good and well. It's simply being at peace with and accepting all that is, even the really challenging stuff, and realizing that that's part of being human. And that's a way that we can relate to the world around us that really starts to change things, that doesn't require anything around us to be different than what it is.
So appreciated.
I think also, one of my big pieces of reflection is this idea, like, I think as a solopreneur, as someone that's just sort of has my own coaching practice or my own consulting practice, there is never a time, or there may never be a time, I'll just say it that way, that I will not need to be intentionally, formally getting, sort of my personal board of coaches. That there may be some things that I can bring to them in a intentional way, but actually a like concerted effort to want to grow and develop. And I'll always want to be that. It won't get to this time where like, okay, I've arrived. I think I've sorted out all of my business challenges, personal challenge, coaching challenge, whatever it is. There will always be that. There may always be that need to really just ask for help.
I love that, Matt. Yeah. So anytime we feel like we've arrived and we've got something fully figured out, we can have a good laugh, because then the next challenge is right around the corner, right?
Amen.
So,
Yes. Yeah. Really good. Justin, how could someone get a hold of you or find you on the web or via LinkedIn? What's the best way?
yeah, wonderful. So actually going to abroad.io is a place where you can find us. And actually there's a resource we have. So it's abroad.io / take care of yourself, with hyphens between take care of yourself. And there's a few audios there they can listen to go a bit deeper. But ultimately, yeah, reach out through the website if they want to be part of the coaching community. Also through LinkedIn, I'm there as well, and would love to connect with anybody that's interested in learning more about this or getting involved. And it's been an absolute honor to meet with you guys today.
Thanks, Justin. So we will also have that link in the show notes in case you would like to take a look at that and have a chance to read some of that stuff. I recommend his website. Really fascinating stuff. You can actually see a little bit more about what Abroad is all about. Dave, you have a little idea on what we have for the rest, or what's next?
Well, first, I wanna say I am interested in learning more and embracing the approaches that you're talking about. I think it's in the corporate world, we've had this really interesting kind of resistance to the access to the other side of balance. And I've over like 30 years, I've been slowly trying to bring it in. So I'm interested in other tools and ways to do that. I want to just end it with a shout out to our sponsor. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatters.us.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. And I just want to thank you so much for bringing your presence and approach and secret sauce to our podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. And like I said, looking forward to all that's ahead.
Thanks, Justin. Until next time, have a great day. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.